For about the last month or so, I've had beta access to Notion Formulas 2.0, which is Notion's next iteration of their formula language. I've been rewriting my course Formula Fundamentals to support the new syntax, and in today's video, I'm going to share everything I've learned so far about Formulas 2.0. So hopefully this video will ease the transition between 1.0 and 2.0 and give you a bit of an idea of what's available to you going forwards. There's a lot new in Formulas 2, and it's almost closer to traditional programming than it is a simple scripting language in some cases. So this may be overwhelming for some new folks and for some people who are used to the 1.0 syntax. I definitely recommend you subscribe to my channel. I'm going to start doing smaller videos and maybe some shorts around Formulas 2.0. And if you are totally lost and you want some support, definitely hit notionmastery.com/formulas and sign up to get notified when my new course ships. So I've set up a small demo area here, Formulas 2.0, and I've got 3 databases in it. I've got teams, projects, and tasks. And of course, the teams can have many projects and the projects can have many tasks. So this will be the demo space that we'll use to showcase some of these formulas. So let's go ahead and have a look at our new formula editor. Of course, we're going to click plus, and we're going to type formula, and we're going to add a formula to our database. We can edit our formula from the sidebar button here when we click edit, or we can go directly to the database and click the column to edit it. So let's go ahead and add a simple formula to test out some of these new features. So you can see here that I can type 2 times 2 and the live preview updates below it. This is new for the formula editor in 2.0. You'll note that while this updates in real time, the column where the formula outputs is actually not updating until I click the done button, and it then is rendered to the page. So when you're used to having things update when you change things, for example, if I change this to 2 times 3, we note that this does not update until I've clicked the accept button. So a bit of a change there, but we should note here that the formulas are going to render quite a bit faster because they're not having to update all of those columns at the same time. The next thing we're going to check out is that new lines are now supported in the editor. So I can actually hold shift and hit enter to add a new line. I could have 2 times 3 expand over multiple lines and the result is still good to go. I can click done and it still works. Let's open that up again. And these are very basic examples. Obviously, we'll get into some more complex stuff as we go. The other thing you can do in Formulas 2.0 is add comments anywhere in your formulas. So you can use JavaScript style comments. That would be a / and then a asterisk. And then I could say start with 2. And I could also go down to the 3 here and say end with 3. And maybe I've put something in the middle here like multiply. And you'll note that nothing is impacted in this formula. It continues to work. The comments are completely ignored and the formula continues to output accurately. One of the most major differences in Formulas 2.0 is the way that we reference properties in databases. In Formulas 1, we use the prop function to reference another property. Now in Formulas 2, we simply type out the name of the property that we want to reference and we hit enter to insert a property token. And you'll know that this is a property token because it has a gray background associated with it. Now this is actually a reference to a property and you can see the output down below. The name is create example page. The prop function continues to work, and when I type out prop and then I pass the name of the prop as a string, it's automatically going to turn it into a property token for me. One little gotcha that I want to note here about copying and pasting formulas in Formulas 2.0 is that when I copy and paste a formula that has a property token in it, and I paste it, we'll note here that it's automatically translated into a prop function call. The inverse is also true, so if I copy and paste a prop function call and I paste it into a formula, that prop function call is automatically going to be translated into a property token as long as the property token exists of the same name. So I could also grab this prop status reference here and paste that in, and we'll see that the status property token is injected automatically. One thing to note though is that you cannot copy and paste what would look like a property token string, so just a reference to status. If I try to do that, we'll see that it's just pasted as some text and I still have to click the status property in the sidebar to inject it as a property token. So that's one little gotcha there because that means that when you share formulas online that you want people to be able to copy and paste and use, you still have to write with the prop function call. But in general, property tokens are awesome because they make the formulas much easier to read, much easier to parse visually, and just shorter in most cases. One of my absolute favorite new features of Formulas 2.0 is dot notation syntax. So let's add another formula to our task database. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate date here. So it's right next to it. And I'm going to call this one next week. And let's change this to a formula. Great, so now let's open this up. And in formulas 1.0, I would probably do something like this. I would say date add, and then I would pass in the date, and I want to add 1 weeks. And then maybe I wanted to format this date, so I could then take the result of that and pass that to format date. And maybe I just want to format it as year, 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 and month, month. And I'll close that. So now I've got next week. We need the day too, since we want to see what week it is and what day it is. So you can see from September 2nd, we went to September 9th. So you're kind of seeing here how we call this function date add, and then we pass that to format date. Now, dot syntax is a bit different. Dot syntax, we start with the object itself we want to manipulate. So that would be the date. And then I would call dot just after it. And what do I want to call on the date? I want to call date add. And I want to say I want to add 1 weeks. And that gets us to that next week. So we can see, didn't actually select my property correctly. So let's do that. So now we can see that September 9th is showing up. And the nice thing about dot notation syntax is that you can continue to chain these things. So instead of having to create these outwardly going function calls, we can now use dot syntax to chain things. So it makes it a little bit more readable from left to right. So I can say, take the date, add 1 week to it, and then I want to format that date so I can continue to chain these with the dots in between the function calls. So in this case, I'd call format date, enter, and what format do I want? YYYY dash MMDD. And that gives us the same result. And you'll see here that this is quite a bit more readable than our previous functional calls. The nice thing about dot notation syntax is that because our editor supports new lines now, I can hold shift and hit enter, and then I can hit tab to enter that in one tab. And then I can go to this next one here, and I can hit shift enter again. And you can see how this makes a really nice readable formula. And I'll click done to save that. And then of course I can add comments to that. So if I wanted to let people know what I was doing here, I might say add a week. And then down below, I might say something like, we want the dates like this. So this is pretty cool, and you can add as many spaces as you want to make it a little bit more readable if that helps. Once you start getting into very complex formulas, it definitely helps to create some white space breaks in between your formulas. One of the best new features in Formulas 2.0 is lists. If you have any experience with JavaScript or another programming language, lists are pretty similar to arrays, so we can have a list of items in it. There are lots of familiar functions from JavaScript like filter, map, and find, and you're going to be able to use all these in Notion. Lists enable us to do really powerful formulas, and a lot of our existing properties are now lists. Person properties are now lists, relations are now lists, and so that means that we can use all of these list functions on these existing properties, and this enables us to create really rich interactive formulas. So let's go ahead and add a new formula to my Teams database here. And as I mentioned, a lot of the different properties are now lists. So for example, I can access the lead on this, and that is a list. If I have multiple people here, so let's say the leads are Ben and Marie, you'll see that we actually show up in rich text format. So in Formulas 1, you would have seen this shown up as a piece of text with emails separated by a string. Now these are actually individual items that we can manipulate when we reference them. So for example, if I wanted to get the first person out of this list, I could say lead dot first, and that's going to give me Ben, and lead dot last is going to give me Marie. And I can also use the at function here, and that will give me the item at a certain index in the list. And this is a 0 indexed array, so if I type 0, that would be the first item in the list. As well as people properties, relations are also lists, so I can mention the projects relation, and let's actually go and add a couple projects to this team. So this team is working on all 3 of these projects. And we can see here, if we wrap our column, that the pages all have their nice rich text formatting. And what lists allow us to do is manipulate the output of the project. So if I wanted to know something about one of these projects, like I wanted to only show the projects that hadn't been started yet, or maybe you wanted to show the projects that were in progress, we can do that. And we can do that with the filter function, which is available on lists. So I can say projects.filter, and a lot of different list functions receive what's called the current context. So basically what this is saying is for every item in the list, we're going to pass you this special property called current. And current represents the current item as it iterates through the list. So we can use current to evaluate for conditions. So if I wanted to say current, and then I can start typing the dot to access properties on the current project that's being iterated through. So I could say current dot status. And I wanted to check, for example, that the status is does not equal not started. And then I can close this. And we'll see here that my list is updating in real time below here, and it's showing only the 2 projects that are not started. So I can click done here, and we'll see that now this is now updating in real time, and this is still a dynamic list with dynamic pages. So this is pretty cool because this is a filterable relation in some ways. So you can see here how we can work with both pages and people lists, and we can also work with our own list. So I'm going to go ahead and open up this formula and delete everything. And lists are created with brackets. So I can just hit 2 brackets and that creates an empty list. And I could create a list that was, say, something like 1, 2, 3. And we can test different things on this list by saying something like dot length. And whenever I use dot syntax here, this is just kind of my preference. You should know that you can always use the functional version as well. So I can type length and pass the array to the function rather than calling it on there. Just me, I really prefer this dot syntax because it's a lot more readable. So for example, I can also use things like I could get the max on that array, and that's going to give me 3. I could get the min on that array, and that's going to give me 1. So for all the items in this list, give me which one is the minimum, is what we're saying here. A couple other things we can do on lists is use the map, which is a very powerful function. So map, again, map is a function that receives the current context. So for each item in this list, we're going to give you current. You can do something with current, and whatever you return will be added to a new list. So this allows you to do really powerful expressions in formulas that we've never been able to do. So for example, I could say for each of those items, 1, 2, and 3, I want to take the current item and multiply it by 2. And these are very basic examples, but you can see here that 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4, and 3 times 2 is 6. So the new list that is returned, if I hit done, is 2, 4, and 6. So this is another example of a function in lists that receives the current context. And of course, the editor is now smart enough, so when I'm working with a list, say I have 1, 2, and 3, and I type dot, it's going to start giving me functional examples down here of things that I could use with lists. So I can do something like sum the list, and that will sum all the items in the list. Or I could, for example, you got first, last, you got slice. You can sort and reverse lists. So if I called reverse on this, it's going to give me 3, 2, 1 instead of 1, 2, 3. That's pretty handy, something that was really difficult to do in Notion Formulas 1.0. We've also got unique and find. Find is another item that receives the current context. So you can see the current and index start showing up as soon as I am in that context. So let's say I wanted to find the first item in here that was greater than 2. So I could say current is greater than 2. And obviously that only gives me 3. And that's an individual item there. So that is not another list. So you may have noticed in that last section that we actually looked at the project status through the relation. And that means we can also look at, for example, I could, from my projects relation in teams, I could say for each of those projects, so that would be map, I would like to take the current project and I would like to return the tasks associated with that project. And we'll see that now we've got all of the tasks from all of the projects. So I could do something like flat on this, which would create a single array, and then I could say length on this. And so that shows me that across all of the projects associated with this team, I can see I have 6 tasks associated with it. So if we go down here, for example, the design team has record 2.0 video. They have 2 tasks associated with that. So if I went down here and looked at that, I can see that there's actually 2 tasks. And since the development team has 3 projects associated with it, they've got 6 tasks. And that means they've got these 3 and these 3. So this is basically, we've just created a roll up 2 levels removed from teams, down from teams to projects to tasks without actually creating a rollup. So that's pretty cool. Now going back to this example, let's say I got rid of this length and I can hit done here. Let's add the wrap column on to wrap these. We can see all of these tasks. But what if we wanted to only see a certain number of those tasks? So I could say maybe I wanted to further filter those tasks. And in this case, current is going to be referring to the task. So I would want to say from the task, let's have the status does not equal done. And let's hit done there. And we'll see that that formula narrows up because it's removed any of the tasks that are done. So, like with all formulas, if I mark some of these as done, let's mark a bunch done. So we basically only got 2 in progress. We can come back up here and we can see that my formula has automatically updated. And of course, it's got that beautiful formatting that we all know and love in Notion. And we can actually click these pages. They're not just text versions of that. If you're anything like me, at some point in your Notion formula writing, you probably had to hard code a date into your formula. And if you've ever done that, you probably realize that's really difficult to do. Here's an example here. I've got June 1st, 2022, 12:01 a.m. If we open that up, you can see here that I'm using from timestamp and I'm passing it a number of milliseconds from midnight in 1970, which is like a Unix timestamp. And that actually outputs that hard-coded date here. Formulas 2.0 has made this much easier by giving us this amazing function called parse date. So I can use parse date and I can pass it 2022 0601, and then I can type a T, and then I can say 0001. Boom, I've got the same date. And so this is actually readable and understandable from not a machine perspective. What these dates use is, as you can see here with the instructions, is the ISO 8601 format. And I've opened that up in Wikipedia. This is a really great place to look at the syntax for this. You can see here, here's the date and time in UTC. So basically you've got your year, month, date, and then you've got your time, and then following that you've got your time zone. So this allows you in Notion to create times in specific time zones from a timestamp without having to use a very specific number that you have to go search on the internet somewhere to find. The amazing thing about parse date is that it returns a date object, so I can keep working with this kind of stuff. So if I wanted to go forwards to June 1st, 2023, I can then use dot syntax to say date add 1 years. And now we've moved to the next year. So you can continue to work with these date objects and manipulate them and perform date things like comparison, date between, date add, and so on and so forth. A couple other date things that we want to touch on that changed in Formulas 2 is date start and date end. So I can say date start and pass it a date, and it'll give me the start of that range if it is a range. And this is no different from the start function in Formulas 1, but you'll note that these have been renamed. So start is now date start, and end in Formulas 1 is now date end. And unfortunately, these do not copy and paste over from Formulas 1. So if you are using an example that has end in it, you're going to have to manually change that from end to date end. One other new date-based function in Formulas 2.0 is week. So now, as well as day and hour and all that stuff, we can pass a date to the week function and we can get the week of the year, which is really cool because now we can do this simple function to determine if it's the current week. I can say, is the week of the date the week of now, and do those two equal? And it looks like for this date it does, because it's September 4th, and this one as well, and September 3rd was Sunday, so that was last week, so that one evaluates to false. So that's pretty cool. So now we don't have to use date format to get the week from the date. Next up is variables. This is really, really helpful, especially when you're starting to work with things like dates where you have to repeat yourself a number of times. You have to write the same formula over and over and over again. So there's 2 new helper functions and they are kind of named the same. One is called let. So you can start typing let and find let, and the other one is called lets. And the difference between these two is that let will set one variable and lets allows you to set multiple variables at once. I almost found no use for let, so I'm basically just going to be using lets for all these demos, and I'd probably encourage you to do the same. So let's go ahead and try out lets. So the first thing we can do is say lets, and I'm going to go ahead and actually add a new line here. And the first thing that you're passing to lets is the name of a variable that you want to set. So maybe I wanted to store the reference to my tasks through the teams in the variable. So I could call that variable tasks. And the next thing that I'm going to do is set the variable. So what do I want to assign tasks to? I would like to use the projects. And for each of the projects, I want current.tasks. So that's going to give me an array of arrays, a list of lists that contains all of the tasks in them. And so I'm going to use the flat function to flatten that into a single list. So that gives me in my task array all of the tasks through all of these projects. And then my last parameter in lets is going to be an expression that will return to the formula. So basically I could say tasks.length here. So I'm actually using tasks and calling task.length. So I can use that multiple times if I wanted to. So I could say something like task.length plus task.length. That's going to give me 12 instead. We'll click done here, and we can see that formula is updating in real time. What might we do with this? We might do something like this. So now that I know that these are all of my tasks, right? I want to know which tasks are incomplete. I might further set another variable. So I'll do that on another line. So again, let sets variables in pairs. So the first parameter that you pass to lets is going to be the name of a variable, and then the next will be the value of that variable. So I can do that again. So I can say unfinished tasks. And I'll hit a comma to add the value here. And this one will say task.filter. And for each of the tasks, we're going to get the current context. So that'll be the task that we're filtering on. We want to know whether the status is not, and I'll say done here. So if I hit a comma again, now we can go back and we can say unfinished task.length. How many of those are there? There's 2. Awesome. So what might we do with that? We might say unfinished task.length divided by tasks.length. What does that give us? That gives us a %. And we can now go to this formula. And because the Notion formula knows that it's a number, I could say, let's make this a %. And we might want the number or not, but this basically gives us a project tracker on all of the tasks across all of the teams that are incomplete. So if you wanted to do this in normal Notion now, you would have to create rollups on projects, and you would have to pull through the task stuff from projects and then combine those all together in another formula in projects, and then use that in a rollup in the teams table. And that would allow you to show this number. But here we can go right through to tasks and generate that item. Now, if we actually wanted to make this repeating 3 go away, we're going to have to round that down. So the first thing we'll have to do is multiply by 100 and then round that whole expression. And then of course we can divide by 100 to get back to a nice whole number. So this might be something like all work tracker. So again, that's the let's function. We've set a variable called tasks and assigned the task to it. And then we set a variable called unfinished tasks, which was we took the variable tasks and we filtered those tasks a little bit. And then the last parameter to let's is going to be the result that we want to display. And we did some calculations there to display a progress tracker. Now, if you've been paying any kind of attention throughout this section, you've probably been shouting at me this whole time saying, what kind of progress tracker checks the unfinished tasks out of the finished tasks? And yeah, that doesn't make a lot of sense. So let's make that change. So I can really simply say finished tasks, and we're going to check that they're done. And then we'll change finished tasks here and click done. And now we've got 67% done, and this one's 100% done. That makes a lot more sense. Similar to let's, there's also a new version of the if function called ifs. And you can think of the S in ifs standing for switch. So this is more like a switch statement where you can provide a set of condition and result pairing, and it makes it a lot easier because we basically don't have to do nested if statements anymore. So for example, I've got this formula that shows a little status message based on the date. So if the date is in the past, today's September 3rd, so we can see I've got today is showing for September 3rd, overdue is showing for September 2nd, and upcoming is showing for September 4th. Let's have a look at this formula. So you can see here, this would basically be how we would have written this in formulas 1.0. So we're basically saying if the date formatted is the same as the now formatted for today, we'll show the today string. And then we've got the nested if statement here, checking whether date is less than now, showing overdue. Otherwise, show upcoming. Now, if you've ever written anything like this before, you know how complex these get and how confusing they get. You'll end up with this many number of parentheses, and it's super confusing. And you can see here I can hit revert to go back to the original. That's kind of nice. But you know how complex these things can get. And what ifs does is it makes it a lot simpler to write these. So I'm going to go ahead and modify this. So let's start actually adding some line breaks here with Shift Enter. And I'm going to add, so here's my first if statement. Today, and if overdue is now, overdue, and basically our default is upcoming. So I can use ifs instead here. And the first thing I want to test is if the format date equals the format date of now. So basically we're checking to see whether these YYMMDD strings match, and that will tell us whether the date is today. So the first test is that, and the first result is today. And now I can get rid of this nested if statement. So I'll just delete this, and I will hold Shift and Tab to tab that one back. And I can actually delete the if statement here. Let's add this. We'll go back, and then I'll add another line break here to clean that up. So now we can see if the dates are the same, then it's today. If the date is less than now, then it's overdue, and otherwise show upcoming. So we don't even have to do any nested if statements before. We just prepare these pairings of conditions and results, and we can do as many of those as we want. So for example, I might do another thing here that's like, for example, I might say if the name contains, and I might say create, then we want a different situation here. So creatable question mark. Name is not defined. Let's select name actually. There we go. And we'll say done. But because this one's overdue, we know that that's not going to apply. So let's put it in the future. And now it's creatable. So you can continue to add these pairings of value tests and results, and it will return whichever one evaluates to true first. I've seen this a lot with these status columns where people will add certain emojis to highlight whether the thing is late or not. For example, I might put when it's overdue, I could put a alarm thing in here and hit a space. And maybe when today is, it's today, I want the exclamation points. How do I get that? Exclaim. There we go. Exclaim. Oh, inserts it as text. That's interesting. Okay, we'll just hit accept for that. Oh, okay, so that adds it. So you can see here, this is kind of like highlighted. But what if we want to go a little bit further and actually add a little bit of style to that? Well, Notion has added this thing called style to Formulas 2.0. So we can actually use that on pieces of text to style our text in different ways. For example, I could take that today string and I might call on it dot style, and I want it to be red. And I also want it to be bold. So you can basically pass any of the Notion color strings, so any of the ones that you can use in the interface, red, orange, and so on and so forth. And they actually have these short codes for the styling of the text. So the ones that apply, let's go ahead and have a look at this first. So now you can see I've got bold today. So you can see here that I've got bold, and maybe I also want this to be italic, and I also want it to be underlined. So each of these items is passed in as an argument to the style function. And if I hit done here, we've got an underline today. So this allows us to colorize our stuff. So maybe we want to do something similar with upcoming. I could say style, and I want the blue underscore background. And I want that one to be in code, so I can use the C string here. Let's also make that in blue text. So you can see that just showing me my preview here. So the colors, you just append underscore background to them as a string, and that will automatically add a background to your color. And you can see I've got C here and blue here. Let's hit done. So now we got some nice color there. Let's also do some stuff for creatable so we can see how all this works. So again, and of course you don't have to use the dot syntax. You can use style as a function as well. So we'll pass style creatable, and maybe creatable we want to be orange and italic. We'll close that. Now we can see that preview down there. That's what we're going to see, and I can click done. And so now we've got this beautiful color scheme here that gives us a lot more idea of what we're trying to do and gain attention on. So this one it's much more rich than just an emoji. I'll show you one of my favorite examples that I built for my Formula Fundamentals 2.0 course. This is an example where I can actually pick the styles from a menu. So if I drop these real quick, you can see advanced planning over here is plain text. If I add blue to it, it'll automatically add a blue background, gray background. switch those out. And then I can add my bolds, my strike throughs, coloring, and stuff like that. So you can see here, I've got a bunch of different things that are being applied in real time, and you can make a beautiful color picker for your texts. And so if we want to have a look at how this works, this gets into a lot of the concepts that we've covered so far in this video. Let's open this up. So looking at the example here, we can see this is quite an advanced one, but we're using all of the features that I've mentioned so far, including setting variables with lets, using lists to filter out which ones we want. We're actually building a list of styles that we can then apply to our name property at the end here. So this is a bit complex, but this is the kind of stuff that you'll learn how to build in my course. The last thing I'm going to cover is the person property. In Formulas 1.0, if I had added a formula and I had mentioned the lead, let's hit done here, it would have just outputted a series of strings that would be an email address. So I could not have said filter where that property contains me and only show those things. So this is really cool for Formulas 2.0 in that we can build systems where we combine a bunch of different people into one property and then use the me filter on that. I've been using this in one of my client builds to build a RACI system. So responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. And each one of those properties is a person. And I can use a formula to combine all those together into a formula called team, which builds a dynamic list that pulls together all the people in the RACI framework. So that's pretty cool. One of the other cool things about person properties in Formulas 2.0 is, for example, if I use the list ability of the lead, I can say, give me the first person in that list, and that's going to be me. We have two new functions available to you for person properties, and that is name and email. So I can type .name, and that will actually just return the account's name. And the other one I can type out is email, and that will show you the email for that person. So these are two new properties that you can access on people. Some of the string functions we have available to us include upper, which uppercases the name that we're sending through here. So you can see it's coming through as all capital letters. Of course, we have the corresponding lower. Now we get delivery in lowercase. We also have this new function called repeat. So I can actually use that lowercase and I say, I want to repeat that, and I want to repeat it 2 times. And that's going to concatenate those two together automatically. And you can see here in this example here that they've used this to create a nice repeating kind of border that you might use in one of your gallery or your board views to separate some content. So that's a way of repeating strings. So let's do that one actually. So I could say like tilde equals, and I want to repeat that 20 times, and I want to style it as blue. So that gives us a cool looking divider that we might use. We might even bold that and maybe italicize it to make it look fancy. The last string function I want to mention here is match. We can now take the name, which is a string, and I can say match, and we can pass it a regular expression that we want to match against. So let's say I wanted to match all of the characters in that string. You'll see here that it's created a list that has every single character in it. For example, if I wanted to say, let's match all the E's in it, it'll match those as well. And of course, these are regular expressions. So I could say starting with D and following with any letter, that's going to match the capital D and then any character, which is E. So this returns a list. So again, if I were to match all of the characters in that, you can see here there's a list, and I can say, how long is that list? How many characters are in this? And there's 8 of those in there. And of course, because it's a list, we can use any of the list stuff. So I could say, give me the character at the first index there, and that's E. So I'm able to match strings and pull context out of them and then use it as a list. So thanks for checking out some of these new features coming out in Formulas 2.0. There's going to be a bunch more stuff coming out in the next couple weeks, so stay tuned. If you want to go deeper and learn formulas from scratch, I have a new course coming out around the end of the summer. You can check it out at notionmastery.com/formulas. See you later.